You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine to get a notification whenever we go live so you can join us in the live chats. Jeff, how you doing this week?
Good. We made it, David.
We did.
We weathered the storm.
The storm. Sure, we weathered the storm. But we are here despite the snowpocalypse that never came. But Anna, I mean, it did get icy.
It was a little slick out there, but it's not now.
Yeah,
and we made it.
We've persevered. Before we get started with our first story, we have another word from our old sponsor, Oil Eater.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
And we're back. And while they are an old sponsor, they're still a new friend. To get a free sample of Oil Eater, please make sure to click the link in the live chat or in the description below. Get yourself a free sample and make sure that you said Today in Manufacturing's podcast sent you. Our first story this week. Tesla recalls full self-driving. It finally happened. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has pressured Tesla into recalling nearly 363,000 vehicles with, quote, full self-driving. The system can reportedly malfunction at intersections and disobey the speed limit. The recall is part of a broader investigation into Tesla's automated driving systems, and this is the most serious action the NHTSA has taken against the car maker. The agency says Tesla will fix the problems with an upcoming software update. Tesla will execute the recall, but doesn't agree with an agency analysis of the problem. CEO Elon Musk took to Twitter, of course, to voice his displeasure, saying that calling an over-the-air software update a recall is anachronistic and just flat wrong. Jeff, I feel like he's focusing on the wrong part of the problem.
They both are.
Yeah.
By the way, I had to Google anachronistic. I was not familiar with that word.
Old-timey.
Yeah.
Old-timey, yeah.
And I think that underscores the issue here. And we've talked a lot about this stuff before, so I don't want to dwell on it too much. But the reality is you've got two people saying the same thing and speaking completely different languages. Yeah. And that is the crux of the issue here. So when you think about a recall on the automotive side of things for NHTSA, that basically just means they're calling you out. Mm-hmm. This doesn't mean you got to return it. They're not parking these vehicles. They didn't even shut off FSD, okay? Whether it's that or autopilot or whatever, they're not turning it off. They're saying, you got to fix this. Mm-hmm. Tesla is saying, we know. Yeah. We're working on it. We're going to do it. So to issue a recall sort of casts Tesla in a bad light, which they don't like. I mean, here's a shocker. An Elon Musk company doesn't like being called out by a government agency. We've never dealt with this before, right? But part of the issue is Musk continues to just reinforce autopilot, full self-driving, autonomous vehicles. He's made these outlandish promises. We were supposed to have an auto taxi 3 years ago, okay? Autonomous auto taxi. So it's that rhetoric that he just will not relax from. When all of the other OEs who have a very similar type of platform are basically saying, yeah, we're not quite there yet. They're acknowledging that. They know it's not full self-driving. And they even use terminology, and even in their marketing materials, they pull back a little bit. Musk refuses to do that.
Yeah.
So NHTSA's response is the same response they would have for anything else. And here's another shock. A government agency not yielding to redefine their terminology to maybe more accurately represent the situation.
Right.
They call anything mechanically unsafe a recall.
Yeah.
Now, again, they're not saying shut it off. They're not saying park the car. They're saying you got to fix this. And it's going to be fixed with an over-the-air software upgrade or software update, which Musk has a point. That's not the same as a recall because it's not taking it to the dealership to get a new fuel sensor put in.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, these two entities need to use the same terminology when they're talking to each other. The other thing that's kind of interesting here is, and I didn't realize this, but all of the self-driving technology that Musk and Tesla are using, it doesn't use any kind of LiDAR. I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just cameras and sensors, not just, but it's cameras, sensors, and artificial intelligence, which is different than everybody else. And it's different than all the stuff we've seen that sort of has pioneered this technology, whether it's in the warehouse with the automated vehicles and things like that. So he's going there, he's taking a different approach, and then he gets frustrated when people don't just yield or bend to his perspective on things. Just, man, it's like they need a translator just to talk to each other and get to the root of the problem, because the issue, and this is where Musk is right again, it's not the technology, it's the way it's being used.
Yeah.
That is the bigger issue here. And that's what NHTSA doesn't acknowledge with a recall.
Yeah.
Because that's not the terminology that they implement. So.
No, I believe that was like the first argument when all this technology came out, is that they were doing it differently with the cameras. And a lot of people came out and said, you can do it better with LiDAR and the other sensing systems. And, they always push back. Anna, I find it curious that they are so upset over word use. When Musk was griping on Twitter, one person actually countered and said, do you think the words full self-driving for what is still a level 2 system is flat wrong? Of course, he didn't reply, which is actually kind of surprising.
He likes to reply.
Yeah, he does like to reply. It's just weird that they get bogged down in these details. And it's almost like, Musk sometimes comes off as this petulant child in some of these situations.
Yeah, and this is not the first time that they've butted heads over the terminology of recall versus update. I think the reason that the NHTSA is insisting on sticking with that terminology is because if Elon Musk had his way, he would quietly issue and initiate software updates without telling anyone that anything was wrong.
Right.
And I think that's where the problem lies, is does the consumer, the owner of this vehicle, have a right to know that there's a problem, a safety problem? And I believe yes.
Yeah.
And so until we can figure out a way to relay that information to the consumer without using the word recall, if that's the problem here, fine, but we haven't. So I think that it's fair to the consumer to use that word, even if the fix is an over-the-air software update. I don't care what the fix is.
Yeah.
Letting people know what's going on, I think, is the point, right?
But it has to be something that gets people's attention. If you send out to 363,000 people that there's going to be a software update, I don't think that they inherently think that there's a safety problem attached to it, where recall automatically associated with
That's a good
safety
point.
problem.
I agree with you. I agree. And I think that that's the only solution at this point. It makes him mad. He thinks that it's unfair to him. I don't agree. So yeah, I mean, this recall, I think you're seeing some people breathe a sigh of relief, at least in some way, because there's been a lot of concerns for a long time about full self-driving, this concept of full self-driving, which, as you mentioned, is a level 2 system.
Yeah.
And in this case, I thought it was interesting because the NHTSA, they do have the authority to issue a recall. That's not what they did here. They asked Tesla to initiate the recall, and Tesla said, okay. So they said that they don't agree.
Yeah.
But out of an abundance of caution, maybe. We all know that being forced into a recall is not a good look, even though Tesla has gone that route before.
Yeah.
In this case, Missy Cummings, a former NHTSA regulator who has argued that the United States should proceed more cautiously on autonomous vehicles, told The Atlantic that she saw Tesla's cooperation as a positive sign that they're willing to work with regulators on this. Again, maybe. It seems like maybe it came at an opportune time when you consider that Tesla, who's like really flying high for many years before this, ended 22 with missed deliveries. They blame that on logistical issues, but also on softening demand. That said, Musk cut prices in January, and now he says that demand has skyrocketed. So I don't know. He's still holding to this very ambitious forecast of like 50% growth of delivery rate in 23. Perhaps this is just a problem that Tesla doesn't want to have right now, and they're just like, fine, let's just let's play ball with these guys, so we don't have another. Because I don't think they want to deal with NHTSA saying, okay, you don't want to cooperate and issue a recall, then we will do it for you. So I do think that is positive.
Yeah.
For whatever the motivation behind it is, at least it's getting done. I will commend Tesla for making so much progress on automated driving. I know that they have put a ton of R&D into it. They're doing a lot of testing. But the problems that the agency, NHTSA, are pointing out are not small ones. There are technology problems with this system. They pointed out that full self-driving is driving straight through an intersection when it's in a turn lane, that the system is not able to identify driver-initiated speed changes. These are massive issues in terms of risk. Those are not small things. So I don't think that it's fair to say that the system is just not being used correctly. The system also has some problems that need to be fixed. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it was kind of like, well, what took so long? I'm glad that this is taking place. The probe started in 2016. Let's get moving on this.
I think part of the issue here and where NHTSA is stuck is, they're being mandated now. Tesla is to issue this over-the-air upgrade. They don't have it ready. Like, they don't have a solution to all these problems. They were not mandated, though.
They were not mandated. Tesla agreed to do it. NHTSA said, please do it. They said, okay. I think NHTSA could mandate it down the road if Tesla says no, but that is not what they did yet.
It's like a voluntary recall.
Right.
But it comes at a time when just last week, another Tesla driver was killed in a car accident when a Tesla ran into a fire truck that was parked on a California freeway that was actually trying to shield a crew clearing another accident. That was one of the issues that this FSD or autopilot has had with flashing lights. And yet we saw another driver fatality. Also, one thing that surprised me is how Musk sometimes seems to get in the weeds with these trivial matters with regulators, especially when he's currently in a court case that's trying to invalidate his 2018 compensation package that's worth $55 billion. Bigger fish to fry. Jeff, to your point about the technology being different, Raj Kumar is a computer engineering professor at Carnegie Mellon University. He doubts that Tesla can fix all of the problems cited by the NHTSA with a software update. He says that Tesla relies only on cameras and AI to make these driving decisions in a system that will make mistakes. He says cameras can miss a lot of things. These are not straightforward issues to fix. If they could have fixed it, they would have fixed it a long time back. So I don't know if that's part of that old argument where he's still more on board with the laser sensors and radar that other companies are using. But I don't know, maybe this could wind up being a larger issue to your guys' point about how they necessarily don't have a fix right now.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, we were going downtown for a basketball game. There was weather, so we just called an Uber. Uber driver actually had a Tesla. And I was talking to him about it, and he's like, yeah, this does have the full self-driving on it, and he put it in. Now, snow was blowing, streets weren't great. He had to keep his hand on the wheel because it couldn't read the markings. It couldn't read the lane. So it was drifting. It was doing other stuff. And then, again, this guy understood that. But obviously a lot of users, and I think that goes back to Musk's rhetoric about this, think they're pushing a button and they can take a nap. And that's not the way it goes.
If I order an Uber and he takes a nap while I'm on the way to the game, that's not a 5-star rating.
50% refund on that,
And I'm not tipping, even though I know you're going to ding my rating if I don't tip you. Anyway.
What's your rating?
It's not good. It's not good, Anna. It's not good. But we're slowly building it back. All right. Our next most popular story. TI announces massive U.S. chip factory expansion. Texas Instruments last week announced plans to invest $11 billion in Utah to build a new semiconductor factory that will create 800 high-tech jobs. The 300-millimeter semiconductor wafer fabrication plant in Lehi, Utah, will be built next to the company's existing fab. The announcement came from Governor Spencer Cox's Office of Economic Opportunity, which awarded TI a number of tax incentives. Haviv Ilan, current TI COO and incoming president and CEO, said there is no better time to further invest in U.S. manufacturing, likely because the demand from industrial and automotive, as well as the free money. The CHIPS and Science Act provides some $280 billion in new funding to boost domestic semiconductor research and manufacturing. Construction is scheduled to begin this year, with production as early as 2026. TI also has 300-millimeter fabs in Dallas and Richardson, Texas. The company also plans to build 4 new wafer fabs in Sherman, Texas, as part of an additional $30 billion investment. Jeff, Texas Instruments has been making some really big moves lately.
Yeah, I mean, all the chip makers have, and that's exciting. And right now, we want to be excited and enthusiastic about all this stuff because we're reorienting a supply chain, essentially. We're bringing it in-house. There's all of these, not just good jobs, but high-paying jobs, technical jobs are going to be associated with these, which hopefully will overcome some of those challenges manufacturing has had in terms of attracting high-quality workers, okay? So there's a ton of stuff that I want to be excited about right now.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, there's a but. There's a
He's
Jeff.
gonna...
Oh, no.
But we have to look forward as well. And when we do, when we've got all these plants coming online about the same time, 3-4 years, are we going to be flooding the market? Are we going to be looking at some of these chip plants that were maybe over-engineered, overproduced? Do we have too much stuff? Maybe that's not the case, okay? Hopefully these folks are smarter and they're forecasting as far as what the needs are going to be down the line. You want to be optimistic about that. So hopefully that is the case. One of the things that's encouraging with a lot of these folks, especially Texas Instruments, is the majority of their products are going into industrial applications. We know there's a lot more technology going into the plant floor that's going to need higher powered chips to handle increased automation and efficiency and output demands. So that's positive there. So you want to feel good about all this stuff coming online. Down the road, electric vehicles having an impact as well, more chips, all that stuff. So hopefully that is the case. Hopefully we're going to have the right forecast to meet the demands and there won't be issues with all these new plants coming online at about the same time. The other thing that's kind of interesting, when you look at this location, Utah, we also saw a lot of stuff going on in Texas. We also saw a lot of stuff going on in Arizona. Utah is unique in that it has been in a statewide drought for like the last 2 years. Semiconductor manufacturing needs a ton of water, just ridiculous quantities of water. So when you see these one big chip plant, which was already there, I believe TI bought this from Micron in 2020 or something like that. So that one was there.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at putting another one of equal size there into a state that is in drought conditions. Now, granted, these plants do a lot in terms of wastewater treatment and recycling and all of that. But you also, again, looking down the line, if these folks are going to be putting out this much stuff, what type of impact is that just going to have on not just the manufacturing infrastructure of some of these geographies, but just the social infrastructure with some of these different demands that are going to be put in place that are unique. Ohio hasn't had a lot of chip manufacturing before. Intel's building this huge facility there. Upstate New York, where Micron is building that, I think it's going to be the world's largest semiconductor fabrication plant. Not a hotbed for semiconductor manufacturing in the past. So it's going to be interesting. We've got market factors, and then there's just going to be environmental factors
natural resources
that are also potentially going to be coming into play. I want to be optimistic. I want to be hopeful, and all this stuff is going to be great. But there are some things that we're going to need to keep an eye on there too. So.
Well, you raise a really good point about the water. But Anna, I want to focus on Jeff's comment about the demand. You know, we've had this chip shortage it's been more than a year now. And it seems like have consumers adjusted their expectations, and will that demand still be there once production ramps up? You know, will there still be a desire for all these products that we currently can't get chips into? Or, you know, will people sort of readjust how they're living and it might not be there anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, you know, obviously that's always a fair point to bring up is, are we overdoing it? But the market for chips tends to be a little cyclical. the Semiconductor Industry Association had said that the second half of 22 was marked by a lull that they don't expect to rebound until 2023, second half of 2023. So you can see, I think at this point, maybe manufacturers are taking advantage of that lull to look at expansion and look at strategy and sort of take advantage of a sweet spot that's maybe a calm before the storm. I do think there's a lot of room for growth here in the U.S. market when you consider that we got very little of our supply from the U.S. before.
Yeah.
So to sort of de-link China from the supply at a time where that link between the U.S. and China is becoming ever more tenuous, I think that there's a lot of room there, especially with electric vehicles, as Jeff mentioned. Consumer electronics, I just don't see that market. Obviously we saw an insane surge during the pandemic, and that's come down a little bit. But going forward, we're going to have a need for IT supplies till the end of time, I guess.
Yeah.
Till we blow ourselves up. So, there's that. And then I think there's right now, obviously, and maybe this is an artificial variable, but that CHIPS and Science Act has included a lot of money, $52 billion in chip manufacturing incentives and research investments, an investment tax credit for semiconductor manufacturing and equipment manufacturing. So we're seeing the impact of that, of course. Here we're seeing a lot of state incentives as well. Meanwhile, some of the challenges I think the semiconductor industry itself is seeing going forward. Great point about water in Utah. That's completely fair to look at. That seems like something they're going to have to figure out. They're also mentioning, and this is the Semiconductor Industry Association, a need to reform America's high-skilled immigration and STEM education systems, meaning labor could be a challenge as we go forward in helping this industry realize its growth potential. Utah County, which is where Lehigh is, their unemployment rate is under 2% now. It's about half of what the national rate is, which is already historically low, right? So there could be some challenges staffing this plant. I think maybe a lot of manufacturers hope some relief will come. Anecdotally, speaking with executives over the last 6 months or so, I think they're really taking this problem seriously. Investing in their HR teams, looking at recruitment, taking matters into their own hands if they can. But I think for semiconductors, as the association points out, there's a benefit to the government getting involved on work visas. They also urge the federal government to commit to a long-term strategy in support of the industry that provides some transparency so they know what is next. This isn't just a couple years out. This is decades out. What can we expect? So we know that we can invest and see that come to fruition without any concerns down the line. And so again, as the tensions with the U.S. and China continue, they might get that from the federal government, because I think the federal government has vested interest in making sure that there's no breakage in the availability of these supplies. And that could be coming if we continue to rely on China there.
Yeah. It says that Utah has been impacted by drought 8 of the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I mean, a lot of that, a lot of that leads to their agricultural applications for all that, but yeah.
As part of the state incentive package, which is likely tied to jobs, TI could receive up to 30% of the additional state taxes it will pay over a 20-year life of the agreement. Talking about education, TI did, as part of this deal, commit $9 million to the Alpine School District in Utah to, quote, improve student opportunities and outcomes. Rough translation, here's $9 million, make us some workers.
Right, yeah.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. Ford stops F-150 Lightning production after battery fire. Ford Motor last week stopped production and shipments of the F-150 Lightning at Ford's Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn, Michigan, after a battery caught fire during a pre-delivery quality check. The automaker says it has no reason to believe electric pickups already in use by customers are affected by the battery issue. There have been no injuries reported, and Ford believes it has identified the root cause, including how many trucks could be affected by the problem. The batteries are supplied by SK Innovation, a Korean supplier with a factory in Georgia. Anna, a lot of fits and starts with the Ford F-150 Lightning. what is this next issue going to mean when it comes to, fulfilling those 2 years of back orders?
Yeah, I think that this has a few broader implications beyond just Ford, because every time that there's a news article about an EV battery fire, people get more and more concerned about what the conclusion is there and how we're going to deal with that. And I know we've talked before about better training for first responders and understanding thermal runaway and how to deal with those fires when they happen. But we've also talked about in the past how there is some impetus on the automakers to come up with a solution from a development side to make sure that people feel better about this.
Yeah.
Because I think it will be a big barrier for them in terms of, they have these huge growth targets. What are you going to do? So Ford is doing that. They have been producing or using these types of batteries in their vehicles to date. There was recently a ton of news about their announcement that they are building a new battery plant in Michigan. It's a joint venture with China's CATL, CATL.
Yeah.
Can I call you CATL?
Mm-hmm. It's CATL.
Which famously, and we discussed on the podcast, Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin called a Trojan horse for the Communist Party. He refused to deal with that project. So Michigan got it. It's $3.5 billion. It's some 2,000, 3,000 jobs, something insane. Anyway, the battery that is going to be built there is what Ford is basically hinging their future EV ambitions on. It's let's make sure I get this right, lithium iron phosphate, LFP. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. LFP.
So it's an entirely new battery than what they've used before. It's got a benefit to it in terms of safety. It's a little bit more thermally stable, and so the chance of thermal runaway is lower on this battery. I hope that buyers can see past some of the battery shortcomings because Ford is really betting on that as well. The improvement in safety comes along with some other improvements. It's cheaper to produce at scale. It requires fewer conflict minerals, cobalt, nickel. None of those are in there. It lasts longer. The biggest drawback is in range. And these batteries perform even worse in cold weather. They have lower energy density, so they need to be charged more often. This is a calculated risk by Ford, who has done a lot of research and says that most of its customers are driving less than 30 to 40 miles per day. I agree that it's a practical choice, but I do think there is some risk behind Ford's decision, considering there are still a lot of range anxiety concerns out there that's serving as an impediment to people's buying decisions, I think, when it comes to EVs. Tesla has started using these types of batteries in 2021. They use them in, I think, the Model 3 and the Model Y, just in those newer model vehicles. But again, their target customer right now, they're selling a lot in California. They have warmer weather. They have better charging infrastructure there. So I can see why people maybe are more drawn to those than you would get in the Midwest. So there could be a perception problem as they try to move away from these other batteries. Perhaps Ford believes that the infrastructure piece of it will be in a better position by the time this plant is up and running and they're actually selling vehicles with this battery in. I think that'd be a couple of years from now. And so it will be interesting to see because I do, you got to commend an automaker for trying something new. And, obviously it's going to make these vehicles cheaper and it's going to help with this problem of battery fires and what to do about them. Yeah. But will people buy them because are they too nervous about the range? I don't know.
Yeah, because the prospect of thermal runaway is terrifying. It's a fire that you can't put out. You can just kind of make everything around it wet so that doesn't catch on fire.
Yeah.
And the story that we covered a few weeks ago about, where you dig a hole for it.
Bury it.
You bury it.
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with that at all. But so I think they're really going to have to work on their messaging around how these are practical choices, and then also solve that safety piece. But
and I will talk a little bit more about the battery production. But Jeff, is part of this just the fact that EVs in general are a relatively nascent industry?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting looking at how the narrative has changed. Okay, if you look at consumer studies over the past 3-4 years in terms of why don't you want to buy an EV, when consumers were asked that, what it really started out with is everything you guys were talking about in terms of the range. Range anxiety was a huge deal. So what did you see everybody focusing on? Hey, the Tesla can now go, 600 miles. We're at 500 miles. We're at 40, whatever it is. Touting that is what they were talking about. They weren't talking about some other things because, again, when you ask the consumers, what's your issue? They weren't talking about battery fires. They were talking about range anxiety. Where do I plug this thing in? Why does it cost so much more? Yeah. Those were the main issues that they were trying to address. So they focused on batteries that have a more power, can extend their range, batteries that allow for towing stuff. There's more torque and more power there behind it. And they were talking about ways that they can bring the price down, which often relates to different size batteries, which then takes us back to these safety issues. Well, now when you talk to EV people or we talk to consumers as to why they're not buying EVs, the safety stuff comes up. The battery fire issue comes up, and it does require automakers to start to change the narrative again. Because the reality is, and I think we talked about these numbers before, according to the National Transportation Safety Board, hybrid vehicles have the highest number of engine fires per 100,000 vehicles sold. It's like 3,500.
Hard for me to forget that, Jeff.
Internal combustion engines go down to about 1,500. When you look at pure electrics, they're down to about 25. Okay, so the percentages are way in favor of battery electric vehicles. Okay, so they're safer. Granted, the scales are different, but that's the type of message that now needs to be focused on as well. We're changing the battery technology to make them even more safe than they were before. It's going to impact some of this charging stuff, but there is a greater charging infrastructure being put in place as well to try to quell some of those fears.
Yeah.
But as everything evolves, just with any product, you have to change the conversation you're having with your customers as well to keep them in the loop on what's going on. So if it's a different battery chemistry, explain what's going on there. I would hope people care.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they will.
Yeah.
All they're going to think about is, wait a minute. First you tell me the thing's going to start on fire and now I can't go as far? What's going on here?
Well, it's true. With any new development, there's a general anxiety. You have the early adopters that just want it no matter what. But then there's the general anxiety over the unknown, and the range made perfect sense with people that want their freedom on the road. And I mean, the idea of these runaway thermal runaway fires, it's scary. It is a crazy visual, a fire you can't put out. So I get the general anxiety around that. And it is going to be difficult for the automakers to what are the things that make people feel safe? They're going to need more popular examples of this technology working, like the work that they do with F1 racing. They need more high profile electric cars doing incredible things safely.
Well, and the other thing, and I agree that Anna brought up about CATL and some of the other battery companies. I know you're going to talk more about the battery companies too, but this is less, in my opinion, of an issue for Ford as it is for SK Innovation.
Yeah.
This is becoming a super competitive marketplace when you look at the folks that are putting out batteries, and SK in the middle of the pack in terms of market share. You see Panasonic, we covered that, all they're doing down in Kansas. So I would say they should be the ones that are more worried and concerned about this long term than even Ford.
No, they are worried. And before I get to SK, I want to say that Ford spokesperson or spokeswoman Emma Berg said, quote, "By the end of next week, we expect to conclude our investigation and apply what we learned to the truck's battery production processes." Well, that was last week, and we're getting pretty close to the end of the week, and we haven't really heard what it is yet. A fix still could take a few weeks. Now, on SK Innovation, they say the battery problem is a one-off accident and not a flaw in the manufacturing process. Part of the issue, though, is that SK has become increasingly worried about giving Ford too much access to its battery technology because the company is worried that Ford is essentially going to steal its trade secrets. So Ford investigators have gone to SK Innovation trying to get more information, seeing if this is a manufacturing problem. And SK has kind of kept them at arm's length saying, hey, no, hands off our IP, because they're kind of stuck in a weird spot right now where SK is a primary supplier and just, everyone else has a different roadmap and SK is not necessarily on it. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. from SK's perspective, just because you would think they want to be a better partner so they could play a bigger role with Ford, maybe if their plans don't work out according to plan?
Well, especially they just invested in a brand new facility, or they're building one. Something like that down in the southeast. So.
Yeah, where is that new plant? I can't remember. To Google, no. But I don't know. Does this make either of you less likely to buy an EV, or are you do you still have the same viewpoint? Like, Anna, are you still wait and see, or does this push your timeline back a little bit?
No, it doesn't push my timeline back. I'm only wait and see not on the technology. I'm wait and see on the variety and availability. I just want some more choice, and I know that in 2 years there's going to be a lot more models on the market, and everything's going to be cheaper. So
yeah. Plus, in 2 years, I'll be able to buy an EV where I don't have to fit 2 massive lunking car seats into it.
Oh, have you ever seen the let me introduce you to the high back booster, David.
Yeah.
It takes up just as much space.
Oh no, that's what we've moved to the high back booster where I was like, oh, finally. I mean, you get a little bit more. They're not as wide, so you can bring your seat back a little bit further. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it's to think that we could fit 3 bodies in the back seat is just a joke right now, because it's having a roller coaster seat in your back seat.
Well, just so you know, even once you get rid of any booster seats or car seats, you will still be vacuuming candy and snacks out of your back seat for decades. I think I still probably got some stuff back there.
I had a harrowing goldfish accident yesterday, and I just went inside.
What's really scary is like anything gummy.
Yeah.
Like even like a Skittle or something, man. Those things get down there for a little bit. Thankfully, winters are cold here, because otherwise that could get really nasty.
Ever had a crayon left in a cup holder in the dead of summer and it just melts?
Yes.
No, mine was the kids wanted more snacks. I grabbed the goldfish from the bottom because it was like the reach behind to grab it from the floor, and just all the way to the front seat.
There you go.
Just rained goldfish. And then after them watching it happen and empty the bag, they're just like, so are the snacks gone? Like,
and then the first thing when they get in, they tell your wife, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You should have seen what Dad did.
Yeah, there are goldfish everywhere.
We didn't do it.
This one time it's on, Dad. All right, our next most popular story this week. Luxury Boeing 747 junked after only 16 flights. A Boeing 747, originally designed as a private plane for a Saudi royal, is heading to the scrap heap after sitting idle for 10 years. The 747 never got its luxury interior and never found an interested buyer, so it's being stripped for parts. In total, the plane flew 30 hours over 16 flights. The plane was being built for Crown Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia, but he died in 2011, a few months before the scheduled delivery. The 747 only flew test flights before being parked indefinitely. According to one aviation analyst, no one bought it because there isn't much of a market for a 4-engine private business jet outside of the Saudi royal family. The plane would have reportedly cost up to $50 million just to finish. So, Anna, my question was, parked for 10 years without any other consequence, does the airport not have like the equivalent of meter maids?
Well, it was not delivered, correct? So was it?
Yeah, it was never even bought.
No, it was never delivered or bought, but so it was just sent to this airport in Arizona to kind of like hang out.
Oh, I guess. Yeah, maybe they just...
It reminds me of when I had an old truck in my driveway for too long, and then the neighbors just started calling the city. I'm like, it's in my driveway doing nothing. They're like, get it out of here. It's an eyesore because it doesn't move.
We hate it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe someone just started chalking its tires. I don't know. Yeah, this is an interesting situation. I guess Boeing's been pretty vocal about its part shortages. So at a minimum, at least they'll find some use for many of the components here.
That is a silver lining.
Silver lining. Yeah, I mean, Boeing has had a complicated few years.
We've had a little bit going on.
Yeah, we know obviously the very public problems that were related to the MAX jet. This company was like a once unstoppable force in aviation, and they've had to really claw their way back from just the bottom when they ran into problems in the last few years and massive losses, low order numbers. It's been a mess. Prior to that, Boeing's commercial jet business was booming, And because of that, they would do stuff like bid on contracts that were like, if you look at their history in government contracts, and I just read an article in Forbes that was talking about how they are now being haunted by some of these decisions that they've made, but they would submit these super lowball bids on military contracts because their commercial jet business was so profitable, and they would just get the deal and just assume that if there were cost overruns and issues like that, they could deal with it because they were making so much money elsewhere. In 2022, Forbes pointed out that nearly $3 billion in losses for Boeing were tied to defense and space programs. They're dealing with now like costs related to inflation, labor, parts, all this stuff that when they made these deals.
It's a perfect storm.
I know. So it's booking losses like crazy. On the new Air Force One, there was many lowball deals that they had made. Anyway. So developing a one-of-a-kind luxury private jet for a buyer that's super specific feels like another gamble to me that Boeing took, maybe approaching it as like this too good of an opportunity to pass up. We know buyers typically pay for jets upon delivery. So there's definitely some risk involved anytime they do this. When literally, especially here, no market exists outside of this
one person.
Single person. Yeah. So to me, it seems like maybe like when, the military lowballing was taking place, Boeing at the same time was looking at that they could maybe more than make up for margin with margins on other products if there were overruns, but not today, right? So I don't know. I'll grant that aviation is very tough, right? It's not like they can build these planes and send them to a dealership and sell as many as they want. Like, that's not really how it works. They're very job specific, pre-ordered. There's a lot of cancellations in commercial as well, as airlines just say, oh, we don't want that now. That really sticks the OEM, in this case, Boeing. And whether or not you agree with Boeing's strategy on bidding on everything that it can, I think that we can at least agree that it's another hit in an era when the hits keep on coming, and hopefully they can get a good amount of scrap out of this. We covered a story recently about recycling airplanes and how much actual value there is in those components. So hopefully they can recoup some of their costs there. But you wonder if they would make the same decision today to build that plane.
Well, while it didn't find commercial success, it's specifically the 747-8, because it was incredibly expensive to operate. Like you said, Anna, there are two that are being transformed into Air Force One airplanes. Jeff, my thought was, why not an opportunity for a cheap third?
Sure.
I'm in.
Let's do it.
Throw it in as a freebie to the government.
We got value add for you here.
If it's good enough for the Sultan.
Yeah, the interior's slightly different than Air Force One.
So we obviously, our jobs are content creation. We write a bunch of stuff for the websites, but we also do a lot of things to support our advertising partners. And for a while there, we were working with a lot of software companies on asset management. Okay.
Yeah.
This speaks to this. I don't care how big you are. How can you have a $350 million asset
at least
just sitting someplace?
Yeah, for 10 years.
I mean, that's what blows
just like
me
corroding
away.
On a runway.
Yeah, it's just sitting there. I mean, if you look at just the bones, okay, like you said, there's a ton of money there. The other thing, in doing a little bit of research, if you think cars lose value, planes really lose value over time. Yeah. So this thing would have cost $50 million to finish off. Right now, if you were like on the resale market, the used jetliner
luxury
market,
private jet.
I mean, this is worth less than that. It would resell for closer to like 40.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. So you're looking at a tenth of the original, probably what it was sold for, what it was going to be sold for. So, that in and of itself, I mean, that kind of speaks, somebody at Boeing definitely dropped the ball. You wouldn't just want that sitting there. The other thing is when you look at all of the different, you talked about scrapping it and what it's going to be worth, just the copper is going to be worth probably in the neighborhood of about $40,000 on this plane. Same thing with all the aluminum.
Yeah.
The actual like shell, if you stripped everything out, that's another like $50,000. And these engines, which are basically brand new.
Yeah.
Again, even if they deteriorate, if they lose value at the same rate as the plane does, this is still like $15 million in jet engines just sitting on this tarmac here. So it is kind of mind blowing. And again, with all of the issues that Boeing has right now, I don't care who you are. If you're looking at an asset that you've put this much into and you could still get that much out of, how does it just sit there and corrode?
Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
At some point, at the 5-year mark, you just got to take it as a loss. You know what? We're not going to find a buyer. We're just not
if you're that airport, you're probably like, hey, we're just going to keep billing Boeing till they roll this thing out of here.
Right?
I guess, yeah.
I know what people pay to store their cars in the winter. I can't imagine what it costs to store this thing indefinitely for 10 years, like taking up at least an entire hangar at an airport. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys mentioned this, how expensive it is. The current list price that I saw for a new Queen of the Skies, as they call the 747-8, is $420 million if it's new. But Boeing doesn't sell them anymore. I don't know. This just seems like a real missed opportunity. Maybe it's something that, kind of a sore subject for the plane makers. So they just, the redheaded stepchild had to be put down. This Sultan bin Abdulaziz
Put down.
was worth, word choice was a little difficult there. So the Sultan bin Abdulaziz was worth $270 billion at the time of his death. So I understand if Boeing thought, hey, we're going to make one for him, and then he can still buy many, many more. He could still buy like 400 more, and we'll have a remaining 70 billion. But this fortune, he divided up to his kids prior to his death. Did you guys look into this guy at all?
No.
He had 16 wives and 32 kids. So, I know 270 billion is going to stretch, but it gets pretty low when you got 32 kids.
Surprised you didn't finish the plane.
Right? One of the kids for your dad, for your dad. Seth, who's watching us live, sent us a photo. Oh, and it's he's rocking the goldfish while he's watching us.
And he's got the super goldfish, the tub.
That's right. He doesn't short anything. Don't pick that up from the bottom, Seth.
Yeah.
Do not pick that up from the bottom. Just raining goldfish everywhere. All right. Our most popular story this week. Seafood processor shut down for, quote, disgusting and dangerous conditions aboard vessel. A recent joint investigation by OSHA and the U.S. Coast Guard found the crew aboard the FV Pacific Producer living in deplorable conditions while working for an operator with a history of workplace violations. OSHA opened the investigation in July 2022, but it was delayed because the 472-ton seafood processing vessel left port in Kodiak, Alaska. The investigation didn't resume until the ship arrived in Seattle about 4 months later. Well, during the inspection, investigators found brown, murky drinking water and expired food being served to the crew. The water used to process fish was leaking into the galley's dining area and dry food storage, and the crew was exposed to electrical hazards like outlets near water and exposed wiring. The ship's operator, East West Seafoods, and owner Christos Sabouris were cited for 20 violations and more than $200,000 in proposed penalties. This East West Seafoods has a history of unsafe operations. OSHA found similar violations in 2012, 2014, and 2018, and that's just the beginning. OSHA's Jack A. Rector in Seattle chastised the operator, stating, quote, for more than a decade, our inspectors have found disgusting and dangerous conditions aboard the FV Pacific Producer. Anna, we often talk about OSHA's lack of teeth to create real change in these situations, but the Coast Guard is a different story. The Coast Guard invalidated the Pacific Producer's certificate of compliance, stopping all operations until repairs are made. So, as long as OSHA can, partner with another government entity, maybe something can actually get done.
I guess. Thank God. You mentioned 2012, 2014, 2017. What you did not mention was 2013. This ship actually ran aground in 2013 in what were described as relatively calm waters. Figure that one out.
Yeah.
The aforementioned infractions, knowingly dumping raw sewage, chemicals, not to mention putting the crew at risk on regular basis, that's a special kind of red flag. If you are a food company and you're feeding your crew expired food and food that is at tremendous risk of contamination because of the way it's being stored.
Because it's soaked with the water being used to process fish aboard your vessel.
God.
If you are that remiss about feeding your employees like disgusting, not up to code food, like what kind of food are you producing? That just begs the question of how this company has been permitted to operate for so long throughout this. I mean, like as you mentioned, this most recent investigation, which began in July of 22, it was paused until October because the ship just left.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a nice option to avoid what's coming to you? Just pick up your plant and walk away in the middle of an ocean investigation? Or, but it also made me realize, like, so they had some time here to like apply some fixes. Yeah. They had a couple of months to try to figure this out. The investigation didn't resume until October, and they were so dysfunctional that they couldn't even address any of this over the ensuing months to at least get out from under the agency's vice. I was just like, but to me, it was like they don't feel the pressure of that.
Yeah, they don't care.
That's clearly they don't feel the pressure. They've been investigated and cited so many times over the years, and they're still operating. Maybe there's no healthy fear of regulators at that point, and that was alarming. But the hardest part for me was, and I'm sure for all of you as well, was just the way the employees were being treated here. As OSHA points out, the risks were immense. You can't trust this seemingly callous and indifferent ownership to do the right thing with your life. And they have the power to, I don't know, like Alaska's, like I'm like sputtering because I'm angry talking about it. But like, if you look at Alaska and their industry, like it's a big state in terms of geography, but the population is small. They have very few big industries, right? Oil and gas is one, commercial fishing is another. I just think the opportunities for people to work are a bit concentrated. And so in that sense, it just feels like these folks are being especially taken advantage here because it's not like you have a million different places you can go work. You're just, Alaska's sort of limited. And so it just made me extra mad for that reason. It's just like these people are probably like, well, I have to,
Yeah. Well, and it's almost like there is this known and accepted risk of working aboard these type of vessels. And maybe it's this badge of honor that they, because they're well compensated from what we've heard previously, and people just accept maybe that these are going to be really rough conditions aboard these vessels when you're out at sea for 4 months at a time. But I mean, you're right. It's just disgusting. And you raise a really good point about what type of food, what does the storage look like for the food that they're then selling into the market? It hopefully they spent all their money on quality food storage,
right?
And that's why there is a miss. And I didn't have a chance to, kind of go on about the other things they did bad because it was already getting long. I mean, if you go through and just list everything that this operator has done, it's quite extensive. Jesse, who's watching us live, adds, "Oh, gross." Agreed, Jesse.
Yes.
And just a shout out to Josiah, who is live on the job site somewhere really cool.
Whoa, hey.
Plus, the beard's on point.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for listening to us live. We appreciate it. Jeff, did you have a chance to look at this vessel?
Yeah, I saw some pictures and I don't know. I get where Anna's coming from in terms of it's a isolated geographic area. There may not be as many job opportunities and things like that. I still don't know how you could come on board this vessel and be like, I'm good here. Like, it blows me away that they would be able to even find workers. If you've got dirty water just seeping into everything, you've got outlets and electrical wires hanging.
Yeah.
I would think the wires. Well, the one thing too that caught me is if you talk to, I just know from talking to friends in the Navy, one of the biggest fears is a boat catching on fire. When you're on fire in the middle, as ironic as that is a huge safety. That's just a fear, a phobia, if you will. And that was one of the things I got cited for was insufficient fire
suppression.
Stuff. So the whole thing blows me away. And it was, you said you didn't go into everything. It was because it was the same stuff repeatedly for the last decade, almost decade and a half. And I think one of the reasons that they're even allowed to operate is they kind of may have used this loophole called administrative dissolution. So what was basically, it looks like what was happening is state agencies, OSHA was coming down, finding all this stuff, finding them. And what this company could do is apply for, or the state would actually inflict this administrative dissolution, which, just as the name suggests, means basically all of those permits and all the paperwork you filed to become a business, they just wipe it clean. And then you are no longer a business. You are no longer in business. You're done. But while that's being done, you can file for reinstatement.
Oh.
During that time, you can't have any lawsuits filed against you. There are no fines you need to pay, all of that kind of stuff. So at the same time that the state or whatever regulatory agency is trying to put you out of business, you can do things to basically stay in business, even if you continually do these horrible things that this place was doing. So a frustrating loophole there as well. The other thing I think what this reinforces is how important traceability is in the food supply chain.
Correct.
We talk about this all the time. Food manufacturers get really frustrated because you're looking at the one in a million that's not doing it the right way. We've got all of these other fishing companies, seafood processing companies, all of these other boats out there that are doing things the right way, being safe, taking care of their people, and you've got this one individual who doesn't. But at the same time, if they're putting out mass quantities of seafood and they're processing it on this horrible, disgusting ship, we don't know where it's going. That's where a lot of this stuff, I couldn't tell you a ton about blockchain, but I know it's a traceability tool that helps us know where everything's coming from and everybody can look at it. Okay. That's where a lot of these things, and it's a technological investment that a lot of people get really frustrated with because you're looking at software, you're looking at different tracking, barcoding, labeling, all of these different things that you need to do. And this is why we have to do it because you've got individuals like this who just don't care. And they're putting stuff out there. Now, who knows where this stuff is going for? Who knows what this could have led to in terms of any types of product recalls? I mean, if you've got dirty water floating around where you're processing raw meat.
And live wires.
God.
I just, Jesse wants to know, are they planning food recalls? They didn't really get into the quality of the food on the vessel. It was all the working conditions for the workers. But I have to assume
that's not OSHA's thing. That would become an FDA thing. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen until it gets to market. And that's where that traceability is so important. Even though food manufacturers get super frustrated with all the investment and all the boxes they got to check to do it, because then they can go back and they can find who's really at fault.
Well, if the cannabis industry can do it to the point where there's a QR code on every product that you buy, that you scan, and it traces it all the way back to the plant and the farm and how it was grown, I think we could do it in the seafood industry too.
Well, you see it all the time. Produce. Whenever we've seen recalls on produce, they can go right back, not just to the farm, but to the batch, everything else.
I wanted to pull up a photo of this because it was built in 1946. This, the FV producer, what was it? FV Pacific producer, because I think that maybe part of the argument is that if you're walking onto this ship, you are already accepting the inherent risk of being on something that's a little ramshackle. So it's 77 years old. And if you look at it, it's not exactly a well-maintained vessel. One thing that caught my eye was this guy, the primary owner of the processing company and the operator of the vessel, this Christos Sabouras. I don't know, for whatever reason, I was imagining sort of a middle-aged man. This is a guy who's 83 years old, so I can't imagine that he's going to change his ways. And at least the Coast Guard was able to shut him down to, it's very rare that we see these bad actors kind of shut down. I mean, granted, after 10, 15 years, but at least something was done.
I think in this instance, one of the things that maybe OSHA should be given the power to do is the mandate that these companies, and I don't know how you enforce this, but they should have to share all this with incoming employees. If you're going to hire somebody and you've had all these infractions in the past, you have to make that known before.
But they won't.
Right. No.
You know what I mean? Like, if they're going to skimp on all this other actually really, really intense, important stuff, they're not going to be like, here's a list of all the infractions,
No, and I mean, we'd like to think people would Google Pacific producer before they get onto it. But I mean, a lot of these things were very publicized, every infraction. So it had to, you would assume that locals would be aware of some of these issues. I mean, how many gallons of sewage did it drop? It It dropped 1,000 gallons of raw sewage into the ocean, only about 3 miles off the Alaskan coast. So it's not only endangering the workers, but it's endangering the entire community.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that could happen and people would still go to work for them. They just must be paying banging rates. All right. Before we move on to, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, Oil Eater.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
And we're back. Click the link, get your sample of Oil Eater. Say that Today in Manufacturing sent you. All good things. Now, in case you missed it, the stories, maybe not as popular on the websites, despite how cool they were, but still impact the industry in a big way going forward. Jeff, I wanted to start with yours because of the joy it brought me. What is your, in case you missed it this week?
Yeah, I picked an article talking about a thief admitted to stealing thousands of dollars of chocolate Easter eggs.
The monster.
Prosecutors said that Joby Poole, 32, used a metal grinder to break through a gate at an industrial park in Telford, central England, and then used a stolen semi-truck to tow away a trailer loaded with Cadbury cream eggs and other chocolate goods worth more than $38,000. Now, eventually they found him, stopped him, and he surrendered to police. But my thoughts are a couple things. First of all, great name. Joby Poole. Gotta appreciate that. Secondly, though, where are you going with $38,000 of Cadbury chocolate eggs? Now, I love them as much as the next guy.
Yeah.
But where do you go with these?
I don't know.
I was expecting he was going to crawl out of the cab and there'd be like wrappers like falling off his lap and he'd have chocolate stains on his face. But like, what do you, like, does somebody buy these?
What
do you do with this?
You go and you give them to the impoverished youth among the land.
It was kind of a Robin Hood type situation.
That's right.
I'm sure he was a Robin Hood.
Yeah, I don't know. It was funny, but also just kind of ignorant. Like, it's not like it was some off-brand or something. I mean, it's kind of Cadbury. Like, are you just going to go back the semi-trailer up to a grocery store and be like, hey, don't ask any questions, but I got some stuff you might like here in the back?
No, you just park it on a busy street, and as people walk by, you go, eggs, Cadbury eggs. I got a Cadbury eggs right here. I got Cadbury eggs.
Keep a low profile.
Yeah, you need a Cadbury egg. Got about
How
a case.
long do you think it would take to sell $38,000 worth of stolen chocolate?
Maybe
Cadbury,
on eBay,
these eggs go for like, what?
$1.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he's got a lot of time. Well, he's going to have more time on his hands now. Yeah. But he sounded like maybe he had a bit of a history of the thieving. You know, maybe not the world's greatest criminal mind. Is this only worse if he tried to steal Reese's eggs?
Well, those are peanut butter.
I would understand that more. I would.
Yeah.
I just don't get, again, I mean, this quantity, like what do you do with this? Who do you know? I mean, I don't think Tony Soprano was ever into like stolen candy, was he?
I don't know. I guess I don't know what the candy underground is like.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's really easy to move this stuff. Maybe his idea was to store it in some sort of underground bunker until Cadbury eggs were no longer available, and then boom, he comes out, has an unlimited supply, selling them at a premium.
He's got a whole network of high school kids to sell them out of their lockers.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other thing. Let me know what you think about this. According to the BBC, some of the authorities said there had been no interference with the product food that was taken. They will be in condition that they could go back on the shelves.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean,
is that at all a hindrance? Like it was, I mean, I guess it was recovered relatively quickly. It wasn't like days or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It all depends. To me, it all depends on whether or not he opened the trailer. Because it sounded like to me like he just stole a truck.
He
backed up a stolen truck, kind of grabbed, maybe he didn't even know what was in there. Just grabbed a trailer and took off. If it wasn't opened, I could see it, but I mean, that could be a really big traceability issue. And maybe just for the sake of it, you got to burn them all. I don't know.
Burn them all?
I don't know. Like, I mean,
it's evidence too, though. Like, do you have to hang on to it for a certain amount of time and then like all this chocolate goes bad?
Right.
It's just foil too, right? I mean, around the eggs.
Yeah, it's not exactly secure.
No, that's true. What if they got wet or something? You would never know.
It's the police started out by saying this was an eggs-stravagant theft.
I was trying to avoid those.
No, the police did it. So I'm just going to say this is their fault. But then Stan on Twitter came in and said, Valentine's Day in custody and flat as a pancake when he gets his just desserts next week.
See, and I was going to throw in sort of a serious comment about how this does drive up costs for manufacturers when you have to secure stuff like semi-trailers versus Cadbury eggs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of ridiculous.
Sorry, Jeff. We've moved on to the puns now.
Yeah. Jesse says they can send it right here. I'll dispose of them.
I'm with you there, Jesse.
All right.
We love Cadbury eggs.
Make sure they are shipped to the Madison area. Excellent police work cracking results. Steve, I'm just going to say, these are comments. These are part of the story. It wasn't exactly a success, but the yoke is on them. Hope that they have to shell out a lot of cash as well as any punishment. And one more.
No.
Luckily, the police hopped on the case before the Easter Bunny bandit could Cadbury the evidence.
Wow.
That one's mine.
You shouldn't have taken
Thought it was never going to end.
I had to.
It's horrible.
Oh, bask in the glory of Easter Bunny puns. Anna, when it comes to the criminal mind and the inner workings of what's going on, can you imagine this guy just sitting on his couch like, you know what I'm going to do? Mm-hmm. I'm going to steal a truck. I'm going to break into a warehouse and I'm going to steal a truckload of Easter eggs.
Yeah, I think you're right that he didn't maybe know what was in there. And you know, you see this like I always wondered like what was the motivation of a porch pirate because they're just stealing a box. They have no idea what's in there. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's obviously a market for goods, like whatever goods are, if they're new, reselling them somewhere. I don't have any black market connections. I don't know what he's doing with these.
I hope he knew a guy. Because if he just like
he's just going
to put himself in this much trouble over this candy.
The excitement of the chase.
Just to set up like an epic Easter egg hunt. Mm-hmm. For the record books. That's what it's for.
He just litters one entire park with them. You know, I was doing it for the kids.
For the kids.
Ugh, man.
If your kids are finding chocolate eggs and eating them in the park, that could be a bigger problem.
Plus, like, you max out at like one Cadbury egg.
Oh, you max out at 0.
No, it's like.
But the ones with caramel, have you had those?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the best.
But even so, like, you have the one and you're like, whoa. Oh, right. Whereas like the Reese's.
What, you?
Yeah, no.
You, of anybody in this room to say, oh, one and I'm completely done.
I mean,
only in moderation, David's middle name.
Yeah, that's right. Only in moderation. However, if they were Reese's eggs, then we'd have a real problem. Yeah, then I would be the driver with the wrappers like, all right. In case you missed it this week, also in food manufacturing with a different angle. A meat plant was recently fined over child labor violations. Marksbury Farm Foods is a Kentucky meat processor under fire for allegedly employing underage workers in its slaughterhouse. Federal labor investigations found 8 minors performing band work at the facility, 7 working in the slaughterhouse, and an 8th cleaning the floors. 2 of the workers were under 16. A 15-year-old was also allowed to work at impermissible hours. The company was hit with about $9,000 in fines for these child labor violations. Marksbury distributes to retail locations in 4 states, including Kroger's and Whole Foods. So my issue was primarily with a lot of the commenters, and we see these on almost every child labor story, right? What keeps these kids off the streets? Or I worked at a farm. I don't understand why it's inherently dangerous for these kids. What keeps these kids off the streets can be anything else, or even other jobs at these facilities that aren't illegal or inherently dangerous. I just don't think it is an acceptable argument to say, hey, I had dangerous jobs as a kid, so they should be able to also. It should be, let's have more opportunities for kids that are safe and also teach them a positive work ethic. Not, you know what, if I could pick eggs from a hen house, they can butcher a hog. It's just not the same. Federal law prohibits workers under 18 from doing most jobs in meat and poultry operations. These laws are in place to protect underage workers, and I just feel like we don't need to go backwards. I understand there's labor shortage issues. There are anecdotal stories about these children wanting to help their families. It's dangerous. Kids can't do those jobs. Stop hiring them to do those jobs. Period. I don't know. That's Jeff, I get frustrated with the amount of stories that that have to do with child labor, and it continues to boggle my mind.
Well, it's a cost cutting thing. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, there's no way around this. It's not because something slipped through the system or whatever. They know they can hire these kids at this age for a lot less than they could hire somebody who's of legal age. That's just what it is, especially when you're looking at food, which again, we've talked about, the margins are super tight. This $8,900 fine is an absolute joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to deter anybody from doing anything.
That's their cost savings in 1 week for having these 8 kids working.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at these jobs, if you want to make the argument that we need to lower that to give these kids some opportunities, that's weak, but maybe. But again, to try to justify it, there's no justifying it. It's against the law. Kids shouldn't be, 16-year-olds should not be in a slaughterhouse. Okay. I mean, regardless of whether you've been in one or not, I've had the opportunity to be in these facilities with Food Manufacturing Magazine. Trust me, I can spare you the details. No.
Yeah.
No. That's a trained skill in order to be in that environment. So again, this is a cost-cutting move. The fine, it probably bothers me more than anything else. And until there is some teeth to this stuff, not to belabor that point again, it's going to continue to happen because you probably do have, and I don't know, this area in Kentucky, I'm going to guess it's probably not the most economically prosperous location or geography. So yeah, these kids probably are seeing an opportunity. It's maybe paying a little better than McDonald's, and
I don't know. McDonald's is getting crazy.
They are
these
actually,
days.
yeah.
The one that I can say is somewhat permissible to me, Anna, was the kid who was doing janitorial services. As long as those were outside of the slaughterhouse, I would feel okay with that. But other than that, I just don't see a justification for these actions.
No, I agree. And there was talk about kids cleaning razor sharp knives and equipment like that. That's terrifying. And I'm with you 100%. I don't think it's justifiable to say, we want these kids are in tough economic conditions and need to help their families. Like, well, no, you're taking advantage of that. That's not fair to these children. So
yeah, that's a very convenient excuse that needs to stop. Now, what is in case you missed it this week, Anna?
All right. So the story I selected was about a patent that GM just received for a touch screen that can reportedly clean itself.
Yeah.
Overnight.
It's really cool.
It's really cool. So they've developed a solution that they hope to apply to the touch screen devices in many of the new vehicle dashboards, which are in many cases like the entire dashboard, with the goal of dealing with smudges and fingerprints. So the process is described as a kind of photocatalyst that when exposed to UV light pulls moisture from the air. The oxidation process then essentially kills most organic material on the surface, so like the oils, right? Breaks those down and other debris. And then after the sterilization of the screen, the UV light is taken away and the screen becomes water resistant once again. The process can reportedly be triggered anytime, but more than likely, they believe users will want to initiate it when their vehicle sits overnight. So you could sort of time it to clean your screen while you're sleeping, and in the morning you have a nice clean screen.
Yeah.
So first, I want to say, GM, here is my money. Take it. I want, I want this like so bad. I just like imagining like driving down the highway with one of these full dash touch screens and like the light hitting. I just drive me nuts. But secondly, I thought this was a fun example of the way automakers are kind of getting out of their lane. Sorry for the pun. I know that you're probably exhausted at this point, Jeff. But they're really pushing the envelope when it comes to product design. And they have a lot on their plates now between EVs, batteries, and all that stuff. On top of that, I think they're seeing the value in these types of like creature comforts that maybe move the needle on a purchase decision when there's a lot available. Car buyers, I think, don't just go down a spec sheet. They get in a vehicle, they sit in it, they they make a decision based on how it feels. If it feels luxurious or does it feel clean? And so I think this is a cool product sort of addressing that need from the market. And as a follow-up, maybe they can license this for other reasons, consumer electronics and things along those lines. If I could set my phone to clean itself overnight, I would do that. Mm-hmm. So, obviously sometimes we see automakers explore these weird patents as a defensive strategy. They don't want their competitors to use it, so they patent it, and then they kind of hold that technology. Maybe we'll see that here as well, but I do think that there's like a really, a consumer application for this that really would make people happy in their cars.
No, this is automotive is the sort of least expected use case for this technology. Mm-hmm. There are so many more. In terms of the licensing, I immediately thought I might at some point be okay with tablets in restaurants in the events that I know that there's this cool absorbing moisture from the air technology used to clean them.
I know, they're so nasty.
Yeah, and maybe if you could just hit them with the UV yourself and let it happen.
Yeah. So I do think that this kind of development will pay back. Not all of it looks like, sometimes you see these weird patents and you're like, what is this about?
No, agreed. And Jeff, I want to stop short of steering your analysis of the story, but what did you think when it came to touchscreens, cleaning themselves?
Do you think GM's really hitting the gas on their design and development here?
Or do you think it's more of a
I think
yield?
we all need to pump the brakes. The first thing I thought of is the best application. You're thinking about cell phones and things like that and tablets. But in the industrial sector, there's a lot more touchscreen controls out there. People, just from the nature of the work, grease, oil, everything on the fingers. Having something like this, I would think that would extend the lifetime of a lot of those displays. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff. I was thinking about my dad too, how you get so annoyed with the fingerprints on the windows. Oh, I could not even imagine, on a lot of these touchscreens that are going to be used for more and more stuff in cars too. So.
Yeah, you actually raise a really good point about touchscreens in manufacturing facilities. I think it's something that's when you see touchscreens like at the bank or somewhere, and they say that there is a nanotechnology protective coating that is helping prevent the spread of disease. Do either of you believe that for 1 second?
No, I have to wash my hands immediately after I touch any of that stuff. I just can't. I can't get it out of my head until
Just ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
Oh.
All right. Well, let's get on to our final thoughts before we get out of here for this week. Anna, what's your final thought?
I don't actually have any thoughts left. This week has just been exhausting, and I keep thinking it's Friday, and turns out it is not Friday. So,
not only is it not Friday, but school is out tomorrow. So it's an even more difficult day.
We've had multiple snow days in a row and then a pre-scheduled day off of school for staff development or something. So it's a 5-day weekend, unexpected 5-day weekend for my kids. But it was icing all day yesterday. So they couldn't even really go outside and play, and it's just been a lot of indoor time.
No, piggybacking off of that, my final thought is that the threshold for snow days these days is garbage. Everything is passable. Today is not a snow day.
I am no longer the curmudgeon.
No,
kids these days.
I'm sorry. I walked in the snow uphill both ways to school. Whatever. There's no way that you should have an entire week with just 1 day of school because of the service days or snow days. And can we get over calling a snow day before it starts to snow? We had 2 snow days called the day before.
But you know why they have to do that?
Because they're lazy?
No, because everybody complains about childcare. If you call it off in the morning, they don't have time to plan.
It's harder for people to come up with a contingency plan,
Well,
David.
then maybe they'll be less likely to call it off when there's no snow in the morning and the roads are fine. I don't know. Just whatever. We have.
You're fine with it.
We have a skills gap in this country. Maybe we push our kids to go to school to get skills a little bit, more. Maybe that'll help.
David's son is 5, by the way.
I'm not. It doesn't only affect him. There's just kids across Wisconsin right now.
He's not doing an apprenticeship or anything right now. It's okay.
He is. He's nearly, he's a skilled craftsman at this point. But hey, Just saying, like maybe we got to put a little bit more thought into it rather than just like, you know what, let's just take another one off. We had half an inch of somewhat crunchy snow. That is not a snow day. That's an East Coast snow day. What are we getting, soft? Jeff, your final thoughts.
First, I wanted to start with some feedback from a reader. Jim sent, and he said he says, I always enjoy the kidding you guys have during the podcasts. Keep up the good work. Jim, I'm really sorry to tell you, like, we hate each other.
Yeah.
It's not really,
this is
not
all
really kidding around. It's kind of going for the jugular type stuff here. So
you should have seen the anger these puns have brought to Jeff. We will all pay the consequences.
Yes. It will come to fisticuffs. Actually, the final thought I had too was, so last week I had kind of the rare Saturday where I didn't have a whole lot going on. Went to a Badger game early in the day and then just kind of chilling out. The weather wasn't great. So I watched a bunch of movies. When are we going to get to the point where there are too many options? Like channels, streaming apps?
Yeah, already there.
Because I started 2 movies and just stopped. They were so bad. And the only reason these movies are out there is because all these channels need stuff.
Yeah.
Man, like
we have jumped that shark maybe 5 years ago. It is just
Wow.
So I mean, the only good part is that because everything is getting made, there's a lot of laughably bad stuff out there.
Oh.
So I'm actually going to need those titles from you. But
oh man.
but no, it's everything. If you have an idea, now's the time to pitch it because it'll get made.
Well, it makes me think of like when I was in college, like TBS and USA and TNT would show like the same like dozen movies. They just go through a circle.
They
but
still
at least,
do that.
At least they were good movies.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that.
Yeah. I want to see Maximum Overdrive 18 times in a 24-hour window.
Hey, it's better than whatever.
Hot trash out there now. Well, and especially now that everything's digital. And it's like, you can't even give me real fire. I'm looking at really bad CG fire. That's one that really I just can't get past.
So,
well,
I think you had the right idea canceling Netflix. Like we need to collectively come to some sort of decision to just thin the streaming herd.
Yeah, there's going to be
too much
consolidation.
stuff.
Yeah.
There has to be consolidation.
So, but also wanted to share our polling question from last week, which we got some really good stuff. So bear with me. They're kind of longer responses, but they are worth getting to. So what we asked about was the cheapest part that you have ever seen create big trouble, or if you've seen a commodity part create bigger issues. And one of the things that everybody responded to is if it was based on the part or a lack of attention to detail. Everyone who responded said it's a lack of attention to detail. It is not because there's a part failure. So it was kind of interesting there. Want to share some of these responses because they're pretty good. We'll start with Lou. He said it was a $45 part that ended up costing about $5,000 in repair. It was a local steel mill, had a request for 2 large piston pumps. When they installed and tested it, it failed in less than 5 minutes. Then they installed the second repaired unit that also failed in less than 5 minutes. Upon inspection, the unit's case drain was blocked downstream from a $45 check valve. So basically, $45 part, $5,000 in repairs.
Man.
They get better. This one is from Joe. He said was some bearings here. The best one he got was a gearbox. Operator said he thought the gearbox leak fixed itself when it stopped leaking, so he never said anything. Then the gears finally found ground smooth inside, and the machine was down for weeks. Well, we found a replacement. Fixed itself. We will never forget that line.
Wow.
I always like that one. You know what? The light went off. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah. These last two are really good. This one's from Myron, and I don't want to date him too much, but he was referring to an F-111 fighter that he worked on. This was like a Vietnam era fighter jet. It was also a $75 million jet at the time, and he talks about a screw that was the culprit of the issue. He said a screw had apparently not been properly torqued during its last installation on a removable maintenance panel, became dislodged, and was sucked into a running jet engine. But that incident actually reinforces his comments because the screw didn't install itself, nor did it dislodge itself. Although it failed to remain in its assigned location, this was because the person who did install the screw failed to do it properly. A part, one of thousands, with a well-defined task can only perform that task when installed by competent personnel, unfailingly following best available procedures. Get this, downstream fallout was way more expensive than just the trash jet. The whole Tactical Air Command was subjected to Operation Screw, which was retraining in fastener installation. So basically, they wrecked a $75 million jet, and then everybody had to go learn how to turn a screw.
Oh, man. See, I thought they were really overplaying that in Top Gun, where they're just like, they overplayed the value of the planes. I'm like, man, it can't be talked about that much. But apparently, Operation Screw.
And this one goes a step further.
Oh.
This one is from Tim. He said the part cost less than a penny. Circa 1995, he worked for a large automotive OEM making airbag control systems. Oh, no. One part, the SAFing sensor, would collapse a spring with a magnet over a reed switch during rapid deceleration or to simulate a crash. And the closed reed would ensure some real physical event was happening in case the electronic airbag decided to ignite a bag based on bad code, basically, if it made a mistake. So to add to the story, it should be noted that the cast aluminum case was closed with tamper-resistant fasteners prior to final test. Final test was a washing machine-sized thruster that simulated a crash and ensured the box worked. There were 18,000 of these boxes that were made at the start of the new model year. One of them didn't fire when the thruster was thrown, so it didn't work when it was tested. The root cause was a clipped lead stuck in the sensor spring.
Whoa.
So a lead, an electrical lead was stuck in the spring. As a result, they had to open every single one of those 18,000 tamper-resistant boxes to ensure there was no other floating clipped leads. This stalled the launch of the new model vehicle, cost millions in fees and losses, and lots of lost sleep, as well as 18-hour days to resolve.
Oh, my goodness.
That's
good
crazy.
times.
Man, sorry. Was it Tim? Sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
I have to say, I like to bring up our podcast polling questions whenever I have my card night, because a lot of people I play with are in the manufacturing industry. And man, do the stories come out. Especially, I have one person I play with that was in fall protection and talking about this first man rule, where basically the situation can be deemed safe if you're the person that has to do it. And so he's just a lot of squirrely situations where ladder to an I-beam balancing, used as a bridge over. And just, sharing a lot of war stories, none that I could share like on air, but it was just, it got us.
Enlightening.
Yeah. It was very enlightening, where I was like, actually.
Safety's real.
Safety is real. And, a lot of people I know flirted with losing their careers at certain points. No.
Yeah. So thank you to you guys for sharing those. Some great stories there to reinforce some of the issues. That came from the Virgin Galactic $45 filter, $100 filter that failed there and caused those issues. So
yeah, thanks for sending those in.
We've some other good stories there. Looking forward to this week, our polling question. We're going to make it a little bit more simpler. We're going to look at those stories that we talked about there and say, whose reputation you think took the biggest hit this week? Was it Tesla with the, if you want to call it a recall or over-the-air update? Was it NHTSA and just the way they handled that in a lot of their dealings with Tesla? Ford with the Lightning battery fire? SK Innovation, who made the battery that caused the fire? Boeing with not understanding what happened to a $400 million jet and letting it sit there for a decade? Or, our man who stole all the Cadbury eggs, did he kind of put a black eye on British criminals? I mean, there's been some pretty good stories. Tom Hardy's had some good movies. Yeah. Daniel Craig. Man. Then we got this guy who got caught stealing some chocolate.
I wish the plot of Snatch was just trying to steal Cadbury eggs.
So again, whose reputation took the biggest hit? Tesla, NHTSA, Ford, SK Innovation, Boeing, or British criminals?
All right. Well, make sure to respond to the polling question. We really do appreciate the feedback. And as Jeff said, the insight is incredible. It really adds a lot to the podcast, and we really appreciate it. But before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine and join Josiah, Seth, Jesse, and everyone else that joins us live and adds to the conversation. We really appreciate you guys joining us. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.